Hi guys, my name is Cassi Light. I work at OdySea Aquarium, and I am our SeaTrek team lead.
Hello, I'm John Rossi. I'm a touring drummer with a passion for animal conservation. When I'm on the road, I spend as much time as possible visiting zoos, aquariums, and conservation organizations. Now, I want to share those places with you. I'll be talking to keepers, vets, conservationists, anyone who can help me in my mission of connecting my people to animals through their people. Join me on my Rossifari. Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back to the Rossifari podcast. So, y'all, I am not a big conspiracy theory guy, but I think I've come up with one that I really like. I think that I'm officially starting the conspiracy theory that people who work in aquariums get to have the coolest names, like last names that are like real words and they sound cool and stuff, right? Because like, as you heard, today's guest is Cassi Light, which is such a cool and funky name, and it's Cassi. There's no E or Y or GH or anything weird. Just Cassi Light, right? But like, she's not the only one. You've heard from my friend Natalie Berry, who works at an aquarium, and like Natalie, also spelled with an I at the end. And Berry is such a cool last name and like a real thing. And then I also have someone at the aquarium that I volunteer at whose name is Allie Joy, which, let's be honest, that's the best name of all of them. That sounds like some cool, like, I don't know, preteen pop star type thing. I don't know. But yeah, so Cassi Light, Natalie Berry, and Allie Joy, and this is my conspiracy theory. And that's right, y'all. We are less than 2 full minutes into this episode, and we've already gone completely off the rails. So let me, re-rail us here and point out that today's interview, as we said, is with Cassi Light of OdySea Aquarium. And we're going to be talking all about this really cool, immersive underwater experience that any guest at the aquarium can have. And of course, this is Rossifari, so, it's not a sales pitch, and it does go into some other cool stuff as well. But honestly, there are 2 reasons that this episode had to happen. First of all, is that this experience is just this really unique, really cool thing, and I want y'all to be aware of it. And it turns out that OdySea is not the only place that has it. So, this might be something you can seek out in your own world, even if you don't make it to Arizona. But then the other reason is that Cassi and I are friends. We're buds, and I've wanted to have her on the podcast for a while now. But, we're 3/4 of the country apart from each other. However, when Cassie's sister decided to have a baby and Cassi decided to come and visit and help out and be a good aunt, it turned out that we were going to be very close to each other. And so we set aside an afternoon together, and she was able to come over to my new place in the Harrisburg area and do the interview. And then we grabbed some lunch and had some friend time. It was a really, really good time, y'all. The Greek food that we had was absolutely incredible. And hey, the interview didn't suck either. No, I'm kidding. It was all awesome. So, a couple of quick reminders before we get to this wonderful interview. First of all, make sure that you hit subscribe so that you don't miss any of these interview episodes, most of which don't have intros that go completely off the rails like this one. And so that you don't miss any of the Zoo News episodes that drop on Fridays. And of course, make sure you're following along on the socials at Rossifari, at Rossifari Pod on TikTok. And if you'd like to support the pod, you can do so by leaving a review or by financially supporting us for as little as $3 a month by going to patreon.com/Rossifari. So with all of that said, it is time to get to it. Here is my interview with Cassi Light of OdySea Aquarium.
I am part of our SeaTrek dive operations as well as husbandry on our exhibit
Awesome. And that's Flam yawning because we are doing this at my place and we each have a dog. It's very exciting. So thank you for being here. And this is extra fun because we've been friends for a while now.
Yeah.
And you're actually in the central PA region here doing like family stuff. So we are doing this. You're in Arizona, but we're here doing this in Pennsylvania.
Yep.
Pretty excited. So yeah, I guess normally we start off with like your background and stuff, but since you're talking about SeaTrek, you know, we had the aquarium on before and we talked about it a little bit, but can you explain what that is? It's a really unique thing.
Yeah, so our SeaTrek program is where we get to take guests fully underwater. They get to interact with the majority of our animals that we have in our SeaTrek exhibit, including stingrays and a wide variety of different tropical fish. But there are also 4 different species of sharks in there, as well as an eel, which we don't interact with those 2 species, but they come out and swim around a lot. So guests get to see them. We get to feed some of our animals when we're underwater as well with the guests. And it's just a fully immersion program, fully underwater.
That's awesome. Yeah, I wanted to do it when I was out there and we couldn't time it out. And then I have had 3 potential gigs out in like the Phoenix area and they've all fallen through or like offered crap money or whatever. And I'm like, I really want to go back.
Next time you come out, we'll make sure to get you underwater for sure.
Yeah. I think I just need to visit, but you know, I like letting my gigs like carry me around.
For sure.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's really go into this because it's a big part of what you do and it's really cool. So like you talk about getting guests underwater, but this is not just like, hey, we're going to throw like a wetsuit and a snorkel on someone. Like talk about what the guests are going to experience, even just getting ready.
Yeah. So we bring the guests up onto our SeaTrek deck area.
SeaTrek deck.
They have their own little box that they kind of station at. Our dive tender actually is the person who does our like safety changing briefing before we even send guests to go and get changed. Once that is finished, we have our guests change into branded wetsuits that they'll wear into the water, and then Crocs that we have them wear for underwater as well.
Okay, so let's pause for a second because I don't think most people listening understand this. I didn't understand this when I started volunteering at Aquarium of Niagara, but Crocs are aquarium life.
Yes.
Like, can you talk about the prevalence of Crocs in this field? It's insane.
Yeah, so Crocs for SeaTrek especially, and some of our team members will wear Crocs just in their daily work life as well. They're super easy to sanitize, and if your feet get wet, it doesn't matter. So for guests going underwater, we can have them wear them fully underwater. And then when they get back out, we sanitize all of that gear so that sanitizer doesn't break down those Crocs. And we've had some of those Crocs since we've started. About 7 years ago is when we first opened OdySea Aquarium. Some of those Crocs are that old.
That's amazing. And like you said, some of your teams will use them like as work shoes. Is that not as prevalent? Because I will tell you, I think all of us at Aquarium of Niagara wear Crocs. I don't think I've seen a pair of sneakers there, except for educators in all of my time there.
Yeah, so a lot of our team members do wear Crocs, specifically on dive team, just because of moving all of our dive gear around and the constant water just splashing onto our feet. So for us, that's what we typically wear. A lot of our other team members, like Aquarius and our like ACE team members, our mammal people, bird people, they all wear sneakers or they change into big boots for when they're like boots on exhibit and things like that. I personally stopped wearing Crocs because I wore my Crocs down and I lost the tread on them way too fast, which made me slip all over the place. So
yeah, that is a big part of it. They say like every 6 months if you're working full time.
Yes, it was about 6 months, and I think I went through 3 pairs of Crocs very quickly, and it just became too much. So I just wear waterproof sneakers now.
Okay, interesting. Very cool. So anyway, getting back to the actual, thing we're talking about, I'm just so fascinated. Like, I've been doing this thing for years and years and years, and suddenly to find out that like Crocs are a thing, and I just never heard it or knew it. It was
for sure. I emailed my boss when I first started, when I was like trying to get ready to move out there and everything and find out what shoes I should wear. And she's like, yeah, the majority of the team member wears Crocs. And I was like, Crocs? Are you kidding me? That's weird. And it worked really well. It just didn't work very well for me.
You're just too forceful.
Yes.
Yes. So cool. So yeah, so back to the actual, thing. So you put on the wetsuit and your Crocs.
Yeah.
And then talk about the head situation.
Yeah.
It's
So
cool.
once all of the guests come back out, our guide, who is actually going to be in a helmet with all the guests. So the helmets are what provides your air. When we're walking underwater, it creates a big bubble around your head, and it gets constant air pumped into that helmet. So that's how we breathe when we're walking underwater. It's also weighted, so it weighs about 72 pounds up at the surface.
Dang.
Definitely harder for the tender who is putting the helmets on and taking them off of the guests as they're trying to get into the water. But underwater, it's only about 10 pounds sitting on your shoulders. So once you're fully under and down, it's not too bad. But we go over how the helmets work, what you're going to be doing when we're walking underwater, as well as the animals we can interact with and the important hand signals we go over.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so communication is by hand signals.
Yeah,
okay.
So in the helmets, you can actually scream, sing, whatever you want in them, and anybody else in that helmet cannot hear you.
Nice.
So we always interact with pretty much the same diver signals that we would use as we're diving in the open ocean or anywhere else as divers. So they're kind of fun to go over, and then guests get to use them when we're underwater to communicate as well.
So what, talk about, I don't know how many there are, but at least give me an overview of a few,
So the biggest one that you'll see the majority of divers in general use is going to be an okay sign. It's actually both a question and an answer. So it's the common one. You'll probably see people just throw up. But that one is used to make sure people are okay. So we'll periodically just check in with all those guests, as well as our safety divers who is also underwater with us, which is one of our team members, just to ensure that everybody is safe and having fun. Some of the other ones we'll use is we like to call it the floppy fish. It's just shaking your flat hand kind of back and forth.
Okay.
It just means something's wrong, but then you kind of act out what might be going on. So you could say something's wrong, my ears hurt, or something's wrong. And you can point to an animal. So you don't like the cow nose rays that are all swarming around you. And we can kind of give some helpful hints, especially to littler kids,
right,
how to kind of keep those animals away from you. And the other one we will use is a big thumbs up. In our diving world, it actually points to the surface when we're underwater. So it means I want to go up. So if at any point guests want to get up and out of the water, they can give us that big thumbs up, and we can actually take them up and out of the water, back to the ladder.
Okay, interesting. That's really cool. And you keep using this word, which is dive or diver or whatever. And I guess what I'm curious about is I know that you are an actual scuba diver.
Yeah.
And a lot of people on the team are and that kind of thing. But how close to for somebody who's never scuba diving. I think it's diving. Anyway, for somebody who's never been a scuba diver, how close is this experience to obviously you're not out in the wild, but diving in an exhibit or whatever?
Yeah. So this experience, because it is just a walking experience, so we don't swim or anything like that, because you can fall out of the helmets pretty easily, actually. Because they're not attached to you in any way. They're simply just sitting on your shoulders.
Really?
Yeah.
This is fascinating.
If you go to fall and you actually fall, your Crocs are super floaty. So you actually can fall out of the helmet and float back up to the surface. So that's why it is a walking experience. But back to your question, I feel like it's a good experience if people are looking into potentially becoming a scuba diver.
Mm-hmm.
It allows you to immerse yourself underwater and actually breathe walking underwater, which in an everyday person, we're always taught not to breathe when we're underwater.
Yes, I tried once.
So,
it doesn't end well.
It does not end well. But in diving, it's your number one rule is to never hold your breath. So it's a really weird concept for a lot of new divers and a lot of people to understand. So I would say it's a pretty good taste into diving. There's a lot of differences, but I feel like it's a pretty good comparable option if you are just looking to see if you're wanting to do something like that.
Dang, that's really cool. Yeah, I quite badly want to do this, especially as I am interested in maybe learning to dive, but I don't really know if I am or not. Yeah, everyone I know who dives is like, yes, how are you not a diver?
How are you not?
Yeah. So yeah, that's really fast. So you can just, how long is this experience?
So the whole experience between getting changed and all of the briefings, getting into the water is about an hour, hour and a half. You're underwater for about 20 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, there's a lot to this.
Yeah.
I know, and I completely respect that. 20 minutes, like on a podcast, doesn't sound like a long time. Like we're going to talk for like 4 or 5 20-minute periods.
Yeah.
But when you're actually underwater and doing this for the first time and experiencing it, I bet it's really different and really like a good long period of time.
For sure. There's a lot of things we get to do underwater. Just getting to see all of the animals and just walking around in general is a big part of it. And then, like I mentioned previously, we get to feed both the cow nose rays and the variety of reef fish that we have underwater. Mm-hmm. It's also getting to see our sharks, see our eel. Her name is Emily. She likes to just hang out in a little tiny table coral that is in our exhibit. But we always typically stop right in front of her because I think she's a really cool animal to point out. And a lot of people don't know she's in that exhibit from the surface.
Right. What kind of animal is she?
Like she is a honeycomb moray eel.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So
nice.
She's super pretty, yellow and black spots kind of all over. So super pretty. We always try to take pictures because guests also get to have cameras underwater.
Wait, what? That's so cool.
So they get to take as many photos and videos underwater as well. So that's kind of part of it. And then closer to the end, we always try to do some bubble tricks in the helmets. So we'll let them kind of blow some bubbles from the helmet. And then we can try to teach them bubble rings as well. So it's kind of fun interacting with them and getting to see them try that out too.
That's really cool. So you get like 20 minutes underwater. How do you, if the helmet isn't attached, just from a physics perspective, how does it stay on when you get in the water? Is it just the weight pressing down or okay?
Yeah, that also is what allows us to actually walk around. Otherwise, because we're in neoprene and human bodies are naturally typically floaty, we would just float at the surface. So that 72 pounds sitting on your shoulders allows you to stay upright more and then allows you to actually walk around when we're underwater.
So basically it's like if I'm remembering correctly, and please correct me because you're the diver and I don't know how to say dive in the past tense. Is that kind of like how a dive bell would work back in the day? Or is it that same idea? Like, does it trap the oxygen in there, but then it's also sending you oxygen? Or am I just way off base here?
Kind of, yeah. I've actually never really played with the dive bells, but it is very similar so all of our air on our SeaTrek is actually surface supplied. So that we don't have cylinders or anything like that underwater with us. It's just the helmets that we have to carry. Subsea Systems, which is the parent operation of SeaTrek, they have different styles where one of them is actually you have a backpack kind of on and you have a cylinder. Those ones are made more for the open ocean area where they have SeaTreks. Yeah.
They have SeaTreks in the open ocean? What?
Yeah, so they kind of carve out trails underwater almost, and they typically have railings that guests hold on to because you also are dealing with the current and all of the natural ocean effects of current and different animals and things like that. But yes, they have open ocean ones. There's about 50 different SeaTreks around the world.
Oh my God. I always thought this was just like a you guys thing. I never heard of this anywhere else. That's fascinating. Are there any other like ones in the US at like aquariums or anything that you know?
Yeah, there's quite a few other. I know Miami Sea Aquarium. Miami Aquarium. Yeah, there's one in Miami that has one.
They're on the struggle bus.
Yeah.
They've had some issues, but you know, that says nothing about SeaTrek. But okay, is that the only other one or?
No, there is one other, I think Minneapolis.
Interesting.
I know there's a few other indoor aquariums or indoor SeaTreks at aquariums around in the US too.
Interesting. And then there's ocean ones.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Wow. Yeah, I didn't realize, I literally thought this was just a like thing that y'all invented. And
nope.
That's cool that it's a whole thing. Wow.
Yeah, it's a whole company. So it's very cool.
That is really cool. So what impact would you say that you see doing an experience like this has on the guests that do it?
Oh, I love seeing, especially some of the littler kids.
Well, wait, how like little can you be to do this?
You have to be 8 years or older.
Wow, okay.
But we get plenty of like 8, 9, 10-year-olds that decide to do it. They have to have a parent with them, obviously. But getting to see them get into the water, and some of them can be super scared. They're like, I don't want to go down. And the ladder part is kind of the scariest because you're facing a blue wall, climbing down a ladder. You don't know what's behind you. You have your safety diver next to you trying to help guide you down, make sure you don't just kind of drop down or anything like that for your safety, as well as animal safety that might be underneath them as they're going down. A lot of them are like, I don't like this, and they want to go right back up the ladder. So as a tender, as a safety diver, you see that and you're firsthand with them. And one of my favorite things to do is if I have a younger kid that's scared to go underwater, especially if some of their family members already are down underwater, because we only take one person down at a time. So that can also be a little bit scarier.
Sure, yeah.
For those kids, they're like going down by themselves. Right. There's potentially the first person down with just your guide underwater. But giving them like a mission to do. So a lot of times I ask them, like, why don't you get down underwater, make sure to take a picture with your family. And then if you just don't want to be underwater anymore, give us that thumbs up and we'll make sure to bring you back up and out of the water. Majority of those kids are like, oh my gosh. And they end up staying down because they want to complete that mission. And then at the end of the experience, we bring them back up and out of the water and you ask them how they had fun and things like that. And they're like, oh my God, I had so much fun. Like I got to do this. And it's just seeing in general, everybody come out with like big smiles on their face, saying it's like one of the best experiences they've ever encountered, getting to interact with those animals, swimming with sharks. So I feel like it has a big impact on the majority of people. It makes, I know, our team feel really good as well when guests come out and are like, oh my God, that was the best thing ever. It boosts our morale as well, rather than just people being very mundane or things like that coming out of the water, which we get plenty of times. But those people that are really excited and had the blast, especially underwater, and you see their big smile, like, oh my God, I just touched a stingray. When we're underwater, it's so cool.
That's awesome. I love that. Now, in my personal experience, have found one of the things that I like to do is take non-animal people with me to these different facilities and do encounters whenever possible. You know, I've had one of my entire bands like meet sea lions and stuff.
Yes.
It's amazing. It's such a cool thing. And I have had the animal that freaks people out the most is rays whenever there's like a ray touch pool or anything. I'm not even talking about going in the water. And I'm talking about tiny rays. I'm talking about, your standard touch pool. I have video of my buddy Jason literally, and he did it like, I'm really proud of him. He did the thing. But as he was feeding the ray, he was going, oh my God, it's gonna touch, it's gonna, and he wasn't acting. And it was hilarious. And I threaten him, to share that video all the time. But, and he's not the only one. I have a friend who is a vet tech who is deathly afraid of rays and nothing else. And, so I'm curious how often you encounter that and how often, how do people seem to do it? Does it help alleviate the fears when they experience it or what?
I would say in the day that we do the treks, we do 7 treks total on a weekend, or actually 9, because we just added Fridays. So we do 9 treks total within the weekend. And I would say a good 4 or 5 of those, there are guests that are going underwater and they're like, they hate the stingrays. They do not like going near them. Anytime a ray tries to come up to them, they freak out. And 9 times out of 10, the guests don't end up wanting to touch them. That entire 20 minutes underwater, they are just freaking out anytime an animal comes near them. But that one time that the guests gets underwater and you are like, it's okay. Like, even we have some baby ones that are in there. So we'll be like, it's a baby. And we have them try to touch it. And the smile that goes on their face is priceless. after they touch those animals and are like, oh my God, that was the best thing ever, especially when it's like right in the beginning. And then the rest of their trek, they're just like, oh my gosh, let me touch them. And it's really cool. And just trying to encourage those guests to have that interaction is really fun. Trying to get them to understand you when you're underwater as well can be kind of difficult. But it is, anytime that smile that happens off of their face is priceless. And I love it.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Yeah. So we're talking a lot about the human welfare of all of this, but how do you ensure animal welfare in a very hands-on, foot-on, exhibit?
Yeah, that is a big thing that our team is always conscious of. So all of our animals, if an animal does not want to be near us, they can go to the complete other side of the exhibit. This exhibit is probably 50 feet long. It is quite a long exhibit. So as we're in one area, all of these animals have a very wide variety of spaces to hide, lay down, escape from the animal or from the humans that are in water.
Right.
And other animals.
Which are animals, to be fair, often the scariest animals.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And even if we have an animal that we're trying to guide around to people for them to touch, if that animal wants to swim away, we let it. We're not going to sit there and try to hold that animal in one area just so those guests can touch them. They can swim away, and we don't force them to have those interactions if they don't want to.
Yeah, that makes sense. Very cool. So do you think, and I know that this is a weird question, but you spend a lot of time with these animals. They're obviously animals you care about. Do you think that they enjoy it? Are they enriched by it in general? Or is it just like part of their life?
I would say all in all, the majority of our animals are pretty enriched by having guests interacting with them. Majority of our stingrays, there's some that are like, nope, I'm going to stay completely away. And we never see them on treks. They are always evading us. But there's a handful that are the ones who's always feeding from guests. They are always the one interacting with us and trying to find the person who has food. Even as just normal divers in that exhibit, doing our maintenance dives in there as well, they come up to you and are searching for food and kind of searching for that interaction as well. So I think the majority of those animals are definitely enriched by it, and they have the opportunity to leave if they don't want to interact,
Right.
like I said. So it's really cool.
Nice. That's awesome. That actually brings up another really good question. You said you feed them, but you're underwater. How do you get the food down there and distribute it and keep it safe? And it might just be pockets. I don't know. You're like, this is a nice wetsuit. Thanks. It has pockets. But how do you go about that? That seems challenging.
Yeah. So for our SeaTrek encounters, we have just bottles that we stuff some shrimp into. And then we have another bottle that has a cap on it that we have just small krill in that we can use to feed the fish. So our guests get to feed our fish just by squirting that bottle and having that right in front of their helmets. And that's kind of the best time to touch those reef fish as well, because otherwise they just swim away typically. But with our cow nose rays, if we didn't have them in a bottle or kind of hidden away, they would just steal all of that food from us because they are searching for the person that has food when we're underwater. But they end up we typically just stick those bottles somewhere in our wetsuit to kind of hide them and carry them around so we're hands-free and we can still do our hand signals and interact with the animals as well as with the guests. So that's kind of how we carry the food when we're on treks in underwater.
Nice. That makes sense. How often do people show up for treks or decide day of to do treks? I don't even know if that's a thing you can do or whatever, and then are just woefully unprepared, because wetsuits don't keep you dry at all. I think some people think that, I think that's the assumption. I regularly talk to people at the aquarium and they'll mention seeing someone in a wetsuit, be like, oh, they're dry. And I'm like, no, they're just wet. Dry suits are the ones that keep you dry, and wetsuits let you get wet. Yeah. So how often do you encounter that where somebody's just completely unprepared, or and do you have ways around that? Or are you just no, you have to wear clothing that will then be underwear or whatever that will then be wet? How do you handle all of that?
So in our changing briefing before we send them to go back and change, we tell them that it is a wetsuit, not a dry suit, and that everything underneath it will get wet. And that is kind of to their discretion. So if they want to and have a bathing suit, feel free to wear it underneath it. If you want to go commando, that is also okay.
Wow.
All
okay.
of our wetsuits end up getting sanitized with a hospital grade sanitizer. So they're clean.
Sure, but
As
like
you're doing it, it's
they
probably
can
not the most
chafe.
comfortable.
Like, yeah, like literally when I was first told I would be able to like get in the wetsuit and get in the main pool and stuff, they were like, so here's what you're gonna want to get. And honestly, most of my team are girls, and they were like, well, we kind of just wear one-piece bathing suits. So they had me talk to one of the guys, and he like explained to me like at these kind of compression shorts, compression shirt, and he was like, and it's literally just for chafing. Otherwise, it's not going to make any impact.
Yeah.
On you, but you don't want your dangly bits touching the neoprene in the water. It's just not going to be comfortable.
No, the majority of people schedule ahead of time,
Okay.
and we send out emails and things like that. Some people, if we have openings, they are able to just hop on. And I don't know in that case if some people end up bringing things with them just in case they can just hop on a trek in it the day that they're there. Other times I do know people are like, I just showed up and I wanted to do this. And we're like, okay, hop on, like have fun.
I mean, yeah, you're right. If the day that I was, or the days that I was there for interviews and stuff, if that had been a possibility, I would have happily gone commando rather than not get in the water.
Yeah, for sure.
I just feel like I would have had like really sensitive nipples afterwards. I don't know. I don't know. That's interesting. But yeah, that's cool. All right. I feel like y'all must deal with a lot of people who are discomforted. And I don't mean like physically so much as like emotionally, but also physically. Like wetsuits aren't the most comfortable thing in the world. What is that like? How much like psychology for humans do you have to think about doing all of this?
For me, luckily, I kind of have that psychology background in college. I have a psychology minor through there. So I have some of that basis to get them comfortable. And that's kind of where I came up with sending kids or even adults in with like a mission to get them to get into the water and at least experience a little bit of it, because we don't force people to stay underwater if they don't want to.
They have choice and control too.
Exactly. So I feel like for myself, I use some of that background that I have when I'm dealing with the guests. And I think a lot of our other team members, like I learned some of the things I know, obviously from older team members and other people that have been there for a lot longer than I have been. And so it's just kind of giving those tips and tricks that we learn over time when all the different people we encounter, because we're consistently learning new things that people can be scared of or end up being a little silly or dumb when we're underwater. But we're consistently training and doing new trainings and keeping up on all of that to make sure that all the guests are safe. But I feel like there's a lot of psychology behind it too.
Yeah, makes sense. So you said that you guys do these, what, Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
Yeah.
Okay. So is this your full-time job, or do you have other, like where you since you still have to obviously take care of the animals and exhibit maintenance and training and all the things you're talking about, or is this just like part of it, but then you also on Tuesday have to like feed penguins or something?
So within the SeaTrek team, we're kind of a jack of all trades SeaTrek team, dive operations team as well. So with our team, we also do the majority of the dive maintenance around the aquarium and all the different exhibits as well. So we do that any other day that we're not doing SeaTrek. And then every single day, we're also doing our husbandry on the SeaTrek exhibit where we take guests in the water, which is feeding, training, cleaning, even just like the deck area and things like that as well.
Cool. Makes sense. Do you find that you ever get, I mean, and it's a job, but you find that you ever are like, ugh, I wish I was just doing a more like normal aquarium-y type thing? Or are you just like, oh, this is awesome?
I don't typically. I absolutely love diving and absolutely love getting in the water as much as possible. I recently moved to a leadership position, so that diving that I do daily has kind of lessened. So anytime that I can hop in the water, even just as an extra diver, I typically will get me out of a computer area or sitting down and just getting back into the field and diving and things like that. I love it. And I will consistently do that.
That's awesome. I mean, makes sense to me. Being in the water is very cool. Awesome. So let's go backwards a little bit now and talk about your journey. So like, did you know growing up that you wanted to do this thing, and like what path did you take and all of that jazz?
Yeah. So when I was younger, my mom always says that when I was younger, I always wanted to do something with animals. From a very young age, I always loved being outside. Growing up, we always went to the Philly Zoo, whether it was with my mom or just family and friends. Always loved just oohing and awing at all the different animals there. And I would be the person to just stand in front of an exhibit and just sit and watch. While everybody else was running around to the million different exhibits, I was like, no, I'm just going to sit here and watch them. So as I got older, still loved being outside. And then we kind of transferred from going to the Philly Zoo down to the Maryland Zoo.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of became our home zoo as we got older. And then came time to find a place to go to college. And in the beginning, I consistently was like just looking for biology, anywhere that had some sort of biology. And then I found a program at Delaware Valley University that had a zoo science program. And in their lecture, they were talking about that it's one of the very few programs in the United States that's zoo science based and focused majority on zoos and animal care. And so afterwards, I did my research and I found St. Francis University out in Loretto, Pennsylvania, super tiny school. And I went and visited there and I kind of fell in love with the program. I fell in love with the campus, and that's where I ended up going to college. I originally was beginning to major in an aquarium and zoo science program. And that has a built-in psychology minor, all based on how animals learn. So we got to have a learning and behavior class where we actually had a lab portion and trained a rat.
Nice.
We trained our rat to run through a maze. And then our next kind of step was doing a canine learning and behavior class where we actually took adopted out dogs from the local humane society in Altoona, Pennsylvania, and brought them to campus with us. They lived in housing on campus.
Sick.
And we went through the semester training them. They all became AKC certified dogs. And we all did research papers with them. And then we had a little ceremony for them at the very end. And the majority of them always got adopted out. So it was really nice to kind of help clear some of those dogs from a local humane society, be able to train them and make them kind of more adoptable out into the community in the area. And then I also actually have a double major. I decided to pick up a marine biology major as well.
Nice.
And kind of fun at St. Francis is we have a biological scuba diving minor as well.
Okay.
So all of my diving that I ever have right to this day actually is all from St. Francis University and learning all of those from there. So shout out to St. Francis University that allowed me to be where I am now.
That is very cool. Now I have to ask, you said this was in PA and you said it was by Lake Altoona. And so like, how do you study zoo science and aquarium and marine biology and all the things that you just said when you're not near marine? And I don't even think, what would have your closest zoo been? Maybe Lehigh Valley, but I can't imagine it was that close.
Pittsburgh.
Oh,
even
okay.
closer.
You were that far out. Okay.
We're all the
Wow.
way out by like Western Pennsylvania.
Okay. Yeah. For some reason, I was thinking Altoona was closer to where you are now, but no. But yeah.
No.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So were you? But it's still not that close, if I'm thinking correctly. So how did that work?
Kind of fun thing is we actually had a big display tank in our science center.
Nice.
So one of our big things with our aquarium-based classes is you took care of that exhibit. You learned how to do the life support on it and doing water changes, cleaning filters, cleaning socks and things like that, and diving in there as well to help clean the actual exhibit itself. And then we also had a whole marine biology lab. So we had axolotls in there, we had snakes, we had stingrays, we had shark, lots of different species in there that we also kind of helped take care of. And then for any of our zoo-based things, we did a lot that went out to Pittsburgh, Zoo and Aquarium out there. Fortunately, when I took that class, it was during the pandemic and we all got sent home during it. So I never actually got to go visit Pittsburgh Zoo and Aquarium, but every year for the aquarium care class or animal care class that they have there, they do a trip out there and go behind the scenes and learn all of that kind of stuff, animal care, husbandry, things like that. One of the other big things that is required for us is to do internships. So again, I was going to do 2 internships, but 2020 happened and I was only able to do one, but I got to do a animal care internship at the Lehigh Valley Zoo.
Nice.
So I was there all summer. I did, I think, 350 some hours there. But it was an amazing experience. Would not change that for the world. A lot of work, but it really throws you fully into what you're going to expect being out in the actual field.
Yeah, no doubt. Was Miko there at the time? I would assume, yeah.
I didn't get to meet.
Oh, okay. Well, I've hung out with Miko the raccoon. I'm just saying. Yeah. So some of us are cooler than others, I guess.
I was in the main zoo area versus the ambassador intern area, so I did not get to meet them, but I got to hang out with Louie, Murphy, and Tattoo the giraffes.
Yes.
Amber the porcupine, who's no longer with us, but she was so fun, and I loved giving her ice during the summer because she would just sploot out and lay directly on the ice, and it was the cutest thing.
That's adorable. Okay, yeah, I mean, obviously we just had them on for their new red panda exhibit, and it was very exciting. I really love that zoo. Man, I can't believe you didn't get to meet Miko. I feel next time you're in town, I'll reach out to Danny and I'll introduce you to the star of that zoo. Because Miko, what an incredible raccoon. What an incredible, just goobery animal. Just the best. But,
for sure. I've heard so many stories about her though. So
she's so good. My gosh. Okay, so and then was OdySea your first like big girl job?
Yeah.
So well, hold on, because before you're just hearing the story of that, like, you're from a small town in like Pennsylvania here, and you went to this tiny college, and then you're like, I'm gonna move to the desert and be by myself and go to the place that weirdly has 3 aquariums just in the desert for some reason. But anyway, what was that like for you?
It was a huge change for me. As I was getting ready to graduate college, I applied to probably 15 or 20 different facilities all around the US, knowing that there's a high potential that I was going to have to move and kind of be somewhere else in order to get a job in the field that I wanted to be in. And so as I was applying to them, OdySea got back to me and they wanted to do an interview. And it was the only place that I got an interview from, even responses back of the 15 or 20 that I put in. And it actually started out as a part-time position that they were offering me, which made it even more of a difficult decision.
Yeah, that sucks. I mean, how do you move your life for a part-time job?
Yeah, so I did a lot of talking to a lot of friends and family and just kind of weighing the pros and cons. And majority of my friends and family are like, you have this opportunity. It's going to be a big, scary change, especially because you're moving across the country, where I don't have family. I've never visited there. I don't know if I'm going to like it. And so I decided to accept the position. Even though it was part-time, I transferred from the Petco that I was working here, my local one in Pennsylvania, to work full-time out in Arizona to at least have some sort of full-time job while I was getting my foot in the door at OdySea. And actually 3 years ago, in 3 days is my 3-year anniversary of working there, which is kind of cool.
Wow.
I was in the process of road tripping across the country today.
It's a good road trip.
3 years ago. It wasn't too bad.
I've done it
Yeah.
a few times.
We made 4 or 5 days out of it, just stopping in different areas. Luckily, few months, or about, I guess I would say about 2 months after I started working at OdySea as just part-time, I got offered a full-time position. So I've been full-time ever since.
Nice. Now, did you feel that being there part-time put like pressure on you? Like you were like, oh, I got to lock this down? Or was it just like, whatever, just do the thing?
I was very much kind of a go with the flow, even though I'm very ambitious and consistently working hard in everything I'm doing in general life. So I did want to very much enjoy what I was doing and learning everything, because we are a jack of all trades team. There's a lot to learn and a lot of knowledge to kind of intake and process in your just day to day. No day looks the same. You're always changing. So you have to kind of go with the flow. But I love it and wouldn't change it.
Very cool. So what was it like adapting outside of work, though? Like you went to this whole place and, I can't imagine that was super easy. What did you do about like friends and like favorite restaurants? Although if you're working at Petco, you probably weren't eating, food at a restaurant very often or whatever.
Yeah.
But like all that stuff, like how did you adapt to life out there on your own?
It took a little while, I would say. Luckily, some of my friends that I'm still friends with now worked at OdySea Aquarium and actually started on the SeaTrek team a month before I started.
Oh, wow.
And so we luckily became very close and are still friends. And those are the people who I hung out with the majority of the time outside of work as well. And we would just go to different restaurants. They had lived there for a much longer time, so they were able to show me around, going on hikes, not in the dead of summer, but going on hikes in general. Lots of pretty landscape out there. Just kind of finding things to do that I enjoy, which is a lot of times being outdoors.
Yeah, or underwater, which is still outdoors.
Yes.
But yeah. Very cool. So, awesome. Is there anything else that you want to talk about as far as your time at OdySea or anything?
Ooh. Right now, I can't think of anything else. I might think of something else.
Cool. Well, then, is there a conservation organization you'd like to give a shout out to?
Yeah. So, actually, here's something else I want to shout out to. I got to be a part of our conservation committee. I still am. And I take a huge role in that aspect of running different cleanups and running different invasive species removal for out in Arizona. And we got lucky enough to be part of the NFL Green in 2023 when the Super Bowl was held out in Arizona. They have kind of a nonprofit organization called NFL Green, and they work with a group of special forces or special operations veterans called Force Blue. And it is all ex-divers from the military that get to work with kids that ended up losing a mom or dad in the military. They do a whole ocean conservation school, and we were chosen to host part of that. And we took those kids underwater on a SeaTrek. And so I want to give a shout out to that conservation organization, Force Blue. Great work that they're doing all around the United States. Every year they go with NFL Green to wherever those Super Bowls are being hosted and try to do some sort of marine conservation initiative, whether it be in the ocean or in our case, it was in the lower Salt River area, helping to remove some of those invasive apple snail species that we have in our waterways.
Wow, that's really cool. I'm a big NFL fan and I've never heard of that. That's
a lot of people
really cool.
haven't, and I think it's a really cool organization in general, as like NFL Green as their nonprofit.
Yeah, that's pretty fascinating. Very cool. All right. Well, and then it is time. It's time now, don't you know? We've come to the end of the show. But there's one tail left to go. You're gonna laugh and say, oh no. It's time for the Rossifari poop story. And she's just doing the silent laugh. There it is. I always love when people like crack up and try not to laugh. And I'm like, damn it, it's a podcast. Laugh. They can't see you. Yeah.
I forget sometimes. So I guess one of my poop stories is that occasionally when we're underwater with guests, we have, obviously you might be seeing fish or a stingray poop. It's going to happen. Guests' faces are really funny with that. But some guests, when we're underwater, because of the way the helmet looks, people can get motion sickness. And we've actually had people throw up in helmets.
Oh, no!
While they're underwater. And we typically just take them back up and out of the water because otherwise it just sits in their helmet with them because there's no real way to get it out. And so it is really gross. I've had it happen once with me when I was underwater, and I was like trying not to throw up in my regulator as a diver underwater. So that is my poop story.
That's amazing. And that was my first thought too. When you said it's not even just that somebody would throw up, but like when I was younger, I was a sympathetic puker. Like if I saw or heard someone puke or even just saw puke, I would go off. And yeah, wow. I'm amazed you haven't had like a full trek just go down.
I'm very surprised, at least in my experience of me being underwater. Luckily, more recently, it's not happened very often. I think in the entire time I've been there, it happened once underwater and once as the guest was getting up the ladder and like had her helmet off. But then we typically are like, well, what did you eat in the morning? Or what did you have last to eat? So then we can be like, okay, is anything gonna hurt our animals is just in the water now because we can't do too much otherwise.
Yay, filtration. Oh my God, that's amazing. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'm glad we were finally able to do this.
Yes, for sure. And you have to come out and visit and get in on a SeaTrek.
I want to go SeaTrekking. I want to go be somebody who has dove in.
Well, there you have it, folks. And just like the Avengers, after that, we sat down and had some shawarma together, and it was a lovely time. So I'm very thankful to Cassi for coming on to the podcast and for encouraging me to get my butt back out to Arizona. And actually, no joke, since we recorded this interview, which was like very recent, I've had 2 more potential gigs come up in Arizona, both of which simply cannot afford me. So I'm sad because there are all these opportunities to get to like the Phoenix area and to see Cassi again and to do the SeaTrek thing and all the things. And they don't work out. But eventually it will work out. I'm assuming that it will eventually work out. So I want to take a moment here to say thank you to my Red Panda level patrons, Dr. Laura Schenk, Dr. Stephen Williamson, Barbara Bennett, and Jenny Owens, and in fact to say thank you to all of my patrons because your support truly means a lot to me. And to everyone who's listening, whether patron or not, I appreciate you all being here. You know, if you could take a minute and share the podcast or share the social media pages, you know, it's always great to have some more growth and to see some things happening. And yeah, we'll be back here on Friday with Zoo News. But until then, remember, friends, the word credits backwards is Steiderk.
The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo.